Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatihira Vanachari Jamunatihira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravirajakacarya Shatarashata Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantapati Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. We're reading this morning from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, I hope text 5. Yes, text 5. We'll do line by line repeating, and then we can have some devotees repeat back the verse. So when we do the repeating back, so we'll alternate between the men and the women. Yeah? It's a little different here, you do? But I'd like to do alternating between the men and the women. So we'll do, yeah? And then we'll see what the internet has to say about it later. Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyas Chechatat Bhayam Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascechatabhayam Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascechatabhayam Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascechatabhayam. Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascechatabhayam. Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascechatabhayam. Mataji. Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hare Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascechatabhayam. Tasmat, for this reason, Bharataha, O descendant of Bharat, Sarvatma, the super soul, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Ishvara, the controller, Harihi, the Lord, who vanquishes all miseries, Shrotavyaha, is to be heard, Kirtitivyaha, to be glorified, Cha, also, Smartavyaha, to be remembered, Cha, and, Ichchata, of one who desires, Abhayam, freedom. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. O descendant of King Bharata, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the super soul, the controller, and the savior of all miseries. Purport. In the previous verse, Sri Shukadev Goswami has described how the foolish, materially attached men are wasting their valuable time in the improvement of the material conditions of life by sleeping, indulging in sex life, developing economic conditions, and maintaining a band of relatives who are to be vanquished in the air of oblivion. Being engaged in all these materialistic activities, the living soul entangles himself in the cycle of the law of fruitive actions. This entails the chain of birth and death in the 8,400,000 species of life, the aquatics, the vegetables, the reptiles, the birds, the beasts, the uncivilized man, and then again the human form, which is the chance for getting out of this cycle of fruitive action. Therefore, if one desires freedom from this vicious circle, then one must cease to act as a karmi, or enjoyer of the results of one's own work, good or bad. One should not do anything, either good or bad, on his own account, but must execute everything on behalf of the Supreme Lord, the ultimate proprietor of everything that be. This process of doing work is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita 9:27 also, where instruction is given for working on the Lord's account. Therefore, one should first of all hear about the Lord. When one has perfectly and scrutinizingly heard, one must glorify his acts and deeds, and thus it will become possible to remember constantly the transcendental nature of the Lord. Hearing about and glorifying the Lord are identical with the transcendental nature of the Lord. And by so doing, one will be always in the association of the Lord. This brings freedom from all sorts of fear. The Lord is a supersoul, Paramatma, present in the hearts of all living beings, and thus by the above hearing and glorifying process, the Lord invites the association of all in his creation. This process of hearing about and glorifying the Lord is applicable for everyone, whoever they may be, and it will lead one to the ultimate success in everything in which one may be engaged by providence. There are many classes of human beings: the fruitive workers, the empiric philosophers, the mystic yogis, and ultimately the unalloyed devotees. So karmis, jnanis, yogis, and bhaktas. For all of them, one and the same process is applicable for achieving the desired success. Everyone wants to be free from all kinds of fear, and everyone wants the fullest extent of happiness in life. The perfect process for achieving this here and now is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is uttered by such a great authority as Srila Shukadev Goswami. By hearing about and glorifying the Lord, all a person's activities become molded into spiritual activities, and thus all conceptions of material miseries become completely vanquished. The verse again. O descendant of King Bharata, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the Supersoul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries. Om Agyantimirandhasya Gyaranjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So we are very happy to have His Grace Vyankata Bhatta Prabhu visiting from New York City with his family, Krishangi Devi, Sachi Mata Devi, and their dear daughter Shruti Sara. So Vyankata Bhatta Prabhu and their family is very closely connected to the Bhakti Center, and short introduction about him, so we take his words more seriously. Vyankata Bhatta Prabhu Vinay Chandar, known by his civil name, was born and raised in New York City and discovered the path of Krishna Bhakti in his youth. He has been an initiated disciple of His Holiness Radha Swami for 25 years. He is a regular speaker and past board member of Bhakti Center, New York. And his previous services include mentoring devotee youth and ISKCON communications. He speaks regularly at educational institutions, temples, ashrams, and yoga studios. He holds an advanced degree in law, master's in religion, and is completing his doctorate in education. In his professional life, Venkata is an attorney by training and practiced law before transitioning to the world of religion and academia. For over 15 years, he is a dean of Hindu life at Princeton University, connecting many souls and having many dialogues with other religions there. And is also the author of 2 academic books on Hindu chaplaincy, and very close to Maharaj also. So very glad to have him, and whenever he spoke in short forums, always impressed by his wisdom. So glad to have him, and would like to welcome him and his family to our Radha Gopinath community by loudly chanting 3 times. Hri Bol, Hri Bol, Hri Bol.
Thank you so much. Namashrestam manamapi sachiputra matara sarupam rupam tasya graja urupurim matharim goshtavatim Radha kundam girivaramaho radhika madhavasam pratoyasya pratita kripaya Shri Guru namnatosmi. It is only by the grace of my teachers that I have been introduced to so many wonderful personalities, the son of Sachi Devi, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, along with his associates such as Swarup Damodar, Rupa Goswami, and his elder brother Sanatana. I have been given an opportunity to enter into the holy land of Mathura, to have a glimpse of the most confidential abode of Vrindavan, and to even offer my obeisance at the feet of Sri Giriraj Govardhan and Radha Kund and Shama Kund, where there is the enchanting eternal service of Sri Sri Radha Gopinath or Radha Madhava. So to such a spiritual master, with love and gratitude, I offer my humble obeisances. If I say anything of value, please know it's just whatever I've received from my Gurujan. And if there's anything that I speak or do that's inappropriate or that there's some shortcoming, that's my own. So it's such an honor and delight to be here in this special place. I can't even imagine. So I've been seeing this very unique Vyasasana for decades. I couldn't even imagine one day I would be in this position, so it's a little embarrassing also. But thank you for encouraging me. So my family and I arrived in Mumbai. We were in the eco-village, Govardhan eco-village, for several weeks. But prior to that, almost a month back, we arrived in Mumbai, and we arrived to tumultuous rains. Maybe for some of you, you're used to it, but it was quite a shock. It was beautiful, but it was quite a shock. It was a little disorienting. We were jet lagged. So from where we were staying not far from here in Kolaba, so we were just driving in a vehicle to come to the temple for Shayan Arti. And it was heavy, heavy rain all along Marine Drive. The wind was whipping, the raindrops were falling. And on top of that, we were jet lagged. So I was falling in and out of sleep. That kind of very disturbed, very tamasic sleep. And just waking up, this rain hitting the window, just totally disoriented. And then somehow we made it to the temple and we made our way upstairs. And as soon as we entered the temple room, actually this is something that Krishnangi Devi, my wife, so we entered the temple room, we had beautiful darshan, Shayan Arti, Kirtan, and then as we were leaving, I looked over, I'm going to embarrass her now, I looked over and my wife was crying. And I asked her why. I think I could understand why, but I wanted to see if we were feeling the same thing. We've been married for 20 years, so sometimes even without speaking you can. So I just asked her and she said it feels like we've just come home. So this Radha Gopinath temple is such a special place. To be honest, I don't want to take up too much time, but I'll try to bring it back to the verse. But to be honest with you, I first heard about this place probably about 30 years ago. And it's a long story. Some of you may also be familiar with the story, but the spiritual community that I was connected to at that time, this is 30, maybe more than 30 years back. So the spiritual community in the US that I was connected to, and that I had really, in one sense, given my heart to, was going through a lot of difficulty. And in one sense, you can say that spiritual community collapsed. It's better now, but at the time, it was quite traumatic. And so at a certain point, I was feeling lost. I was feeling, not physically, I was living in home, I had a wonderful family, I was sheltered, I was protected, but I was feeling spiritually homeless. Except there was one thing that I would hear about this community in this place called Chowpatty, on this road called 7 km Munshi Marg, or the road was called KM Munshi Marg, the address was 7 km Munshi Marg. Sometimes they would say opposite Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. And I'd never even visited, but I just hearing about it. And there was one devotee she was kind of my initial mentor and Shiksha Guru in spiritual life. And we lived in New York, and she lived in this community, which is some distance away. But whenever she would come to India, she would, like many devotees, they would come to New York and fly out because we have a major airport there that does flights to Mumbai. And so every time she would come to this community and she would return back from it, almost every time she would stop at our home, and then she would just tell me stories about this place. So when this feeling of spiritual homelessness was coming over me, the thing that gave me comfort, and I've never really told anyone this, but I'm sharing it with you today, the thing that gave me comfort was that somewhere on this planet, there's this place that has this address, 7 km Munshi Marg. Like some of you know about this very special address, 26 2nd Avenue. Raise your hand if you know 26 2nd Avenue. Okay, raise your hand if you've been to 26 2nd Avenue. Yes, I don't. Such one Prabhu has been. Anyone else? Been? No? So maybe for you it's like a dream, it's just existing 26. So for me, 7 km Munshi Marg was like a dream. But I'm sharing this because please know that what you all were doing as a community, whether you were there, whether you were here in those days or not, but what this community was doing was having effects even in New York, even in London, even in Russia, even in so many places. It's such a special place. So I want to beg for all the blessings of the Vasis of this special place, and also the senior devotees and Vrajvasis. Nartaki Mataji, please give your blessings, and please forgive, I'm just like a fumbling child in front of you, please. Please, mic is coming.
I'm praying to Srila Prabhupada, who is the actual blessing giver, to bless you with spiritual strength for all your preaching endeavors that you're already engaged in. So it was wonderful to hear all your glorious activities. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. So I began with this little story of feeling homeless and then feeling a connection to the shelter of this spiritual home, to express my gratitude, but also because, in one sense, if we really think about it and we reflect on it, we're all in search of that shelter, that satisfying, permanent shelter, that permanent home, isn't it? And we try to look for it in so many different places. And sometimes we get a little piece of it, but often we feel that it's not within our grasp. And we're searching for it and searching for it and searching for it. Srila Prabhupada has so many very powerful statements in this purport. I'd like to read one again. He says, everyone wants to be free from all kinds of fear, and everyone wants the fullest extent of happiness in life. Sometimes as Vedantins, because we're also a Vedantic tradition, even though our school of Vedanta may be a little bit different than Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya school or other great Acharya schools, but we're also a Vedantic school, and sometimes within the world of Vedanta, there is a tendency to speak very strongly against the fleeting happiness of the material world. And so sometimes when someone comes to a Vedanta lecture for the first time, they can feel very startled. Even some of these purports in this section, I think maybe yesterday's verse or the verse before that, really heavy statements about that this material world is just so full of misery and it's so temporary, and one's near and dear ones become a source of misery and suffering. Like Prabhupada talks about the band of relatives that evaporate into oblivion. What a statement. Can you imagine you go to your family reunion, family festival, and you speak of this line? Be like, what's wrong with this person? Heavy, heavy statements. So sometimes we can get into so many of these heavy statements that we can think that it's not even, we shouldn't even try to be happy. But I love this statement that Prabhupada makes here because it confirms for us that yes, everyone has, not only does everyone naturally want to be happy, but it's actually our birthright. We're seeking that happiness because that's our own nature, Satchid Ananda. That we are qualitatively, we're of the same nature of our divine source, of Sri Krishna. And what is the nature of Sri Krishna? Satchidananda Vigraha. So we are also Satchid Ananda. That means that Ananda, that bliss, that satisfaction, that happiness, that joy, all of that is part of who we are. So naturally we're going to seek it. And the fact that we're seeking it is proof, in a certain way, by a certain logic. The fact that we're searching for it, seeking it, means that somewhere it's there. The fact that we feel hungry means somewhere there is something that will nourish that hunger, that will satisfy that hunger. The problem is not that we're seeking happiness. The problem is that we are, like sometimes we say in America, we're looking for love in all the wrong places. I think there's a song like that or something. We're looking for happiness we say in the wrong places, or we can say in the incomplete places. So we're not completely finding what we're looking for. We're looking for a home in a place that's not designed to be a home in a permanent sense. Like I work in a college, right? Prabhu was mentioning, I work at Princeton. And in that college or university, there are many students, and all the students live on campus. All the undergraduate students live on campus. They're required to. So they all have, we call them dormitories. They're dorms. Maybe hostel, they say here, right? Same thing. So is there anything wrong with a dormitory or a hostel? No, there's nothing wrong with it. It's created for a purpose. It's created for you to stay there while you're studying. And it's designed to give you some comfort. It's modeled after a home. But it's not quite a home. So you see students, at least there, I don't know here, but there, students in their dorm rooms, which are usually very small, sometimes they decorate the dorm rooms, they hang up some posters or something on their wall, and they unpack their clothes and their belongings, their books and things like that. But at the end of the academic term, they pack it all up again. In fact, at Princeton, there are strict rules that by so-and-so date you have to be out. And if you don't get out, they start billing you, they start fining you. And if you get enough fines, then even they can not allow you to graduate or to pass. pass through. So they're very, very strict about it. So everyone knows, every student there knows, that it feels like home. So I should get a little bit comfortable, but I shouldn't get too comfortable. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a dorm room. But it becomes a problem if a student refuses to pass out. He refuses to graduate, matriculate out. And he says, no, no, I'm very comfortable. I want to stay here forever. Then it becomes a problem. Then we say there's some mental disturbance, some emotional disturbance. Something is, this person's not able to cope. So in a similar way, this material world, this is an analogy, this material world, we can look at it, sometimes it's compared to a prison house, but also we can look at it as like that dorm room. Like it's here for our education. We're meant to study, we're meant to learn. Prabhupada talks about 8,400,000 species of life. We've been passing through grade 1, standard 2, first year, second year, third year. Finally, we come to the human form of life. Finally, we come to this human form of life. Finally, we come to Atato Brahma Jigyasa. We come to the point of actually inquiring into something deeper. Now is the time that we actually should take that step and receive our diploma and graduate. So it's not a problem. The dormitory is not a problem. The problem is if we become confused about its purpose, then that becomes a problem for us, and it also becomes frustrating because that place will never be our home, no matter how much we try, no matter how much we hope, no matter how much we desire. So better we should realistically recognize what it is meant to be, and set our sights on our actual home, our true home. And to encourage us, to push us in that direction, sometimes the Shastra, sometimes Sri Krishna himself make very strong statements about the temporary or unsatisfying nature of this material world. Not to make us feel bad, not to make us feel like pessimistic. You know this word pessimistic? We're not pessimists. We are the most, like one of my Shiksha gurus, His Holiness Sachinandan Swami, I asked him this once about this idea of, are devotees pessimistic? Are we optimistic? How do we understand? Sometimes there's very pessimistic statements in the Shastra. He says, no, they're not pessimistic. They're transcendentally optimistic. We're meant to be the most optimistic. We're supposed to be such optimists that we are like setting the bar, the goal of what optimism should be. People should be attracted that, hey, I want to be like these people. They're so optimistic. They're so hopeful. They're so full of asha, so full of hope. That's what our Sangha should be, right? So we're not, even though there are these heavy statements, they're not meant to be pessimistic. They're meant to awaken that transcendental optimism for our true home. The Srimad Bhagavatam tells us that actually the satisfaction that we're seeking, it is attainable. Savaipam sam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhoksaje ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. Yayatma suprasiddhati. That satisfaction of the Atma, of the self, of the real self, that full satisfaction, that complete satisfaction, suprasiddhati, that's available to us. That's accessible to us. That's waiting for us. We have to learn to seek it. We have to learn to not settle for the temporary imitation versions of that. So how do we do that? So this purport, it gives us, Srila Prabhupada gives us some glimpses into 3 secrets. He doesn't use the language of secrets, but I'm reading into it that there are 3 secrets in these purports, in this purport. So time is short. How many of you would like to hear one of the secrets? How many? 2 secrets? All. Okay. So we'll just go through a little quickly. So there are 3 secrets to accessing this complete satisfaction. And if we can do it, or if we can even endeavor to do it, Srila Prabhupada tells us in this purport, and actually the verse itself tells us, that we can be saved, we can be delivered from all miseries. Prabhupada says, everyone wants to be free from all kinds of fear. We can be free of all kinds of fear, and we can experience that fullest extent of happiness, even while living in this material world. So the first thing is what is directly recommended by this verse, and that is hearing, glorifying, and remembering Krishna. If we can simply learn this art of awakening our propensity, our inclination, our taste for hearing, for glorifying, and for remembering. Or maybe we can, that's the order that it's given here, but we can also play with the order. Let's say hearing, remembering, glorifying. If we can awaken our taste, and if we can create a practice of doing these things, because in the beginning taste may not be there. Like if anyone is a parent and you have a child, we don't only go by the child, especially when the child is young, you don't only go by the child's tastes. You don't only say, "Beta, what do you feel like eating today? What taste do you have?" And the child says, "Chocolate, Papa." "Okay, chocolate today." Next day, "What do you feel like eating?" "Chocolate, Papa." "Okay, chocolate today." "Do you feel like eating this vegetable?" "No, Papa." "Okay, no problem." No. Because how will it taste for some children are the opposite. Some children just seem to naturally, they come out of the womb and they seem to want to eat like khichdi and stuff. I don't know, maybe from a previous life. But as a parent, we still have a responsibility to help to develop the taste, help develop finer tastes, taste for healthy, nourishing foods. And we help that child to avoid ruining their appetite. Like there's this expression, right? Ruining one's appetite. Like if you eat too much junk food, then when it comes time to eat that nourishing meal, you don't have that appetite anymore, or you're full, or right? So as parents, we do that. So we have to recognize that spiritually we're like still children developing our taste. So we may not have that natural taste, or it may come in little glimpses, and sometimes we feel very inspired to hear lectures or read from Bhagavatam, other Shastra. Sometimes we just don't feel like it. But I was just hearing a wonderful seminar that His Grace Gauranga Darshan Prabhu was giving on creating Bhagavatam study habits. And Gauranga Darshan Prabhu is really emphasizing this, that consistency is like the key that unlocks this taste for Bhagavatam. Until we use that key of consistency, our own subjective taste for Bhagavatam will come and go, come and go, come and go. And we'll even, I'm speaking personally now, I've struggled with this for years and years and years. Even subtly, you start to sort of blame everyone else, blame the text. Oh, I have a taste, but sometimes it just gets so boring. This section just feels so, there's no excitement, there's no story. Or, I like lectures, but, some speakers are, right? But that consistency of hearing, of reading, that consistency has to be there. And there's, within Vedanta, within all schools of Vedanta, there's a process given of how it begins with Shravanam, it begins with hearing. And then there is Mananam. So whatever we hear or whatever we read, because reading and hearing are two expressions of the same practice, whatever we hear, whatever we read, we need to take some time to mananam, to digest. Just like prasad, if you take prasad and you just stuff it in, but you don't actually chew, you're not really getting the full benefit. That digestion begins with even chewing, breaking it down, letting the enzymes do their job of breaking down. That's how the nutrients are released from the food. I'm not such an expert on the science behind it, right? But in a simple way, in a basic way, right? That's what's happening. And when we try to shortcut that process, we're missing out on what it's meant to do. So in a similar way, we hear, we read, but then we need to dedicate at least a little bit of time to mananam, to reflection, to digestion, to breaking it down. And then after mananam, does anyone know what is the next step that comes? It's not mentioned by name here, but it's implied. After mananam comes something called nididhyasanam. Nididhyasanam is further internalizing, where now we've broken down and we've extracted what are the essential teachings, what are the essential, what is the kind of principle that's being spoken of here. And then nididhyasanam is, then we ask ourselves, how am I going to apply this? How am I going to internalize this? How am I going to make this a part of who I am? Not that it just remains in the book, and when I close the book, it stays locked up there. No, how is this going to stay with me now? This is nididhyasanam. And then, so some schools of Vedanta, they just end there. But then we take it further, that from there, then we can go into, how can I absorb myself in this remembrance, smaranam, and how can I then go and glorify Krishna? How can I then repeat what I've internalized and share what I've internalized? Which we can say is like kirtanam. One meaning of kirtanam is to glorify Krishna. So we can do that musically, but we can also do that in our speaking, in our harikatha. So this full process is there. If we're practicing this full process and we're practicing it with consistency, we're practicing it prayerfully, not going in a mood of that I'm going to figure this out with my intellect, but going in a mood that, oh Krishna, oh Adhoksaja Krishna, you are living in these pages of Bhagavatam. This is your literary, your incarnation in the form of this book. And I want to meet you in these pages. Please show yourself to me, reveal yourself to me. I may not be deserving of it, but please, Krishna, come and meet me and speak to me in these pages. If we're approaching in that mood with consistency, with prayerfulness, and we're trying to practice this Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, Smaranam, Kirtanam, that gives us access to this happiness, this home that we're seeking. So first secret. Second secret, which Prabhupada cites to a very beloved verse of the Bhagavad Gita, 9:27. Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yad jujoshi, dadati, yat tapas, kanteya, tat kurushva madarpanam. Yat karoshi, whatever you do. Yad ashnasi, whatever you eat. Juhoshi, whatever you offer, particularly this word implies offering as in ritual, as in sacrifice, but we can also broaden it to think whatever we offer. And whatever we give, especially in charity. Whatever tapasya we perform, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, whatever hardships we have to endure, because life is full of all of these things. Life is full of so many activities that we do, so many occupations and jobs and roles that we have to play. We have to eat to live. We have to, if we want to live civilized, responsible lives, we have to give in charity. We have to perform some sacrifice. We have to undergo some tapasya, some austerity. So that's a part of what it means to live a responsible, stable life. All of that, Krishna says, every single one of those things. And we can also read Yat Karoshi as just like a catch-all. Whatever you do, anything you do that, how? Madarpanam, as an offering to me. His Grace Dwarkadish Prabhu, I just heard him give a talk, and he said, this is the Gita in a nutshell. He says, Yat Karoshi, Madarpanam. That's it. You don't even have to know the whole verse. Just know Yat Karoshi, and then Madarpanam. Because Yat Karoshi includes everything inside. Yat Karoshi, Madarpanam. Done. Bhagavad Gita. You can live Bhagavad Gita just by knowing these 4 words. A powerful idea. Yat Karoshi, Madarpanam. Whatever you do as an offering to Krishna. In the purport to that verse, in 927, Srila Prabhupada makes this very powerful statement where he says that every person should learn this art of how to always remember Krishna in everything that he or she does. That this is what it means to actually, this is the perfection of human life, to actually learn to connect everything that we do as an offering to Krishna. What is our tendency? Our tendency, at least my tendency, is I keep things separate in categories. But this is my spiritual category, this is my material, this is my job category, this is my family category. So I can behave one way, I can be one way in the spiritual category, and then I'm in a... But what Krishna is asking us to do is integrate all of these things. Don't keep these separate categories. What if we could see everything from the moment we get up to the moment we go to sleep at night, and everything in between as just another opportunity, Madarpanam, to offer to Krishna, to make an offering to Krishna. It's not just that we're making offerings in the temple, it's not just that we're making offerings when we're sitting in front of the homa or the yajna. It's not just that if we're a pujari. Every single thing we do can be that offering. So we can actually do this, we can actually put it into practice. If you're at a job, if you're a student, in your relationship, what if in relationships when there's some conflict, whether it's conflict between spouses, whether it's conflict between, within the ashram, whether it's conflict between parent and child, what if even in that conflict, even in the hardship, that tapasya of that, right? Every relationship has tapasya already woven into it. You don't even have to try. You don't have to put it additionally. It's already there just by the nature of being embodied beings with egos. When egos get together, there's going to be friction. There's going to be some conflict that's going to create some tapasya for us. Just living together, working together is tapasya. But what if we could learn to see even those moments as, this is an opportunity to make an offering to Krishna. Right now, I can offer what I'm going through right now to Krishna. Wouldn't it change the way we approach that conflict? I couldn't say the same thing when my ego is being hurt and I want to hurt her ego. I can't say the same thing if I'm thinking, no, this is my offering to Krishna. How I respond, the situation may not be my offering to Krishna, but how I respond to that situation, that's my offering to Krishna. Even if no one else sees it, no one else, 99% of the time, no one else will see it. But that's my offering to Krishna. How amazing that would be. So this is our invitation to see everything as that opportunity, to see everything that we do as an opportunity to grow closer to Krishna, to remember Krishna, to keep that connection alive and vibrant. Unfortunately, sometimes in the name of bhakti even, we make Krishna such a distant God. This is something else that I've really been trying to learn from Satchidananda Swami and other teachers who are really powerfully challenge us, that especially in the name of bhakti, we pride ourselves on being personalists, and yet we can have such an impersonal relationship with Krishna. We just keep Krishna so far away from us. I don't want to bother him with my little, no. But he wants He wants that. Imagine if a child says, my father is such a great man, I don't want to bother him. So I just won't talk to him, I won't come and see him, I won't tell him my problems, I'll just go somewhere else. Will the father like that? Will the mother like that? Oh, my parents are so busy, they're so... Or even worse, sometimes we make Krishna, we imagine that Krishna is this terrifying, judgmental, right? Because we're so used to judging ourselves and judging one another that we imagine if I'm just a little guy and I have so much judgment in me, so by that logic, maybe Krishna is this big, huge, judgmental, angry, I can't go in front of him. I know devotees, dear friends, who they've told me they feel like they can't even go in front of the deities. They don't want to stand in front of the deities too long because they feel like scared. Fear. So it's natural to have some sense of awe, especially in terms of deity worship. We should keep some appropriate sense of awe and veneration. We shouldn't get so familiar that we commit offenses. So that's not what we're talking about. But our line, our mood especially is Krishna is the transcendental person, the supreme person who accepts us and loves us like no one else can. He accepts us and loves us more than we can ever accept or love ourselves. But because of our own hesitation and because of so many strange ideas that we import into our bhakti, we complicate things and we keep Krishna very distant from us. But what if Yat Karoshi Madarpanam, what if we can just bring Krishna closer to us, connect with Krishna by just bringing Krishna into every moment, everything that we do. Just, Krishna, this is my offering to you. I have one wonderful Shiksha Guru and friend. She's kind, she just treats like a friend, but she's an amazing devotee named Rukmini Devi. How many of you have met or you've heard from Srila Prabhupada's disciple Rukmini Devi? Amazing soul, amazing, amazing soul. So she emphasizes and she taught us this, that make it a practice that whatever you're feeling, especially if you're feeling some emotion that's very difficult, you're feeling some fear. In this verse, they speak about being free from fear. If you're feeling fear, what do you do with that fear? You take that fear and you offer that at the lotus feet of your deities. You offer that at the lotus feet of Krishna, of Gopinath, of Murlidhar. You're feeling angry, if you're feeling frustrated, you take that anger and frustration and you go into Krishna and you say, Krishna, this is what I have to offer right now. Please accept it. Not that we want Krishna to be afraid, not that we want Krishna to be angry, but who else are we going to go to with it? You go to the one you love. So you take whatever you're feeling, whatever you're experiencing, good, bad, sunny days, rainy days, whatever it is, in any situation, that's how we learn ahaituki bhakti. That's how we learn to have this unconditional experience, dynamic relationship. Whatever we have, we offer. Which brings us to the third, what I'm calling the third secret. And this is the big one. The third secret is this, that Krishna is waiting for us. That anything that we do, we have to do, that's good, we have our practice, we have to make our efforts, but any efforts that we make are just reciprocating with Krishna, who's just patiently waiting for us the whole time anyway. Anything that we can do, it's not that that our activities, that our seva, that our sadhana, that is somehow winning over Krishna or pulling Krishna or forcing Krishna. Sometimes we think like this, that our practices have to be so strong and intense that we have to like drag Krishna to us. But the reality is almost exactly the opposite of that, that Krishna is so near to us. He's the nearest to us. He's the nearest being to us, like the Sufis say, he's closer to us than our own breath. He's closer to us than our own pulse or our own heartbeat. That's also our understanding. He's the closest to us, and he's just waiting for us, waiting for us, waiting for us. Hey, I'm here, I'm waiting. So anything we do is just a little reciprocation with what he's doing, with the grace that he's pouring on us at every moment anyway. And so this third secret is to awaken to Krishna, who is sitting by our side. And here in this verse, it's not coincidental that what's mentioned specifically by name is Paramatma. One of the oldest spiritual philosophical texts that we know of, this body of text called the Upanishads, gives an analogy. It gives it twice, it gives it in two different places. And the analogy is of two birds sitting in one tree. That two birds are sitting on the same branch in one tree. One bird has turned towards the berries or the fruit of that tree. Some are sweet and some are bitter. And this first bird is just so fixated and becomes obsessed with finding those sweet berries and avoiding those bitter berries or fruits. And that bird has become so fixed on that she has forgotten that next to her, very close to her, is her eternal companion, that second bird. That second bird is described as Atmarama, self-satisfied. That second bird has no need to turn to these sweet and bitter fruits or berries. That second bird is doing what? Does anyone know? Just observing the first bird waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for that first bird to turn and to see, hey, I'm not alone. And the satisfaction that I'm looking for in this little taste of sweetness that comes from this fruit, and the experience of pain that I'm trying to get away from that comes from this bitter tasting fruit, that the freedom from that pain and the source of that happiness is waiting for me in the form of my beloved companion who's sitting on this branch next to me. That is what the super soul is. That is what Paramatma is. That the Atma is the self in this embodied state. We're just bouncing around the material world looking for sweet and trying to avoid bitter. And that second bird is waiting for us. That Paramatma is just patiently waiting. And in our tradition, in bhakti, we take it even one step further. That it's not that the bird is just silently waiting for us. That bird is singing a very sweet song to us. And in the form of Krishna, Bhagavan, the most complete, or we can say the fullest expression of that same Paramatma, the same Brahman, that Ishvara Bhagavan, Lord of sweetness, Sri Krishna, he plays his flute for us. He plays that song. He's not just a songbird, he's a flute-playing bird. He plays that flute song for us. And it's said, at least in Braj, they say that for every one of us, there's a separate song, or maybe a separate tune, a separate note. Just like Krishna has how many cows? 9 lakh cows. That means 900,000, yeah? 900,000, 9 lakh cows. And each one of those cows has a name. And Krishna has a way of playing his flute, that he has like a note for each one that is the name of each one of those cows. And in the evening, he plays each note. And each one of those cows, the Bhagavatam says, the gopis are actually telling this, they're reciting this in glorification, separation from Krishna. And the gopis say that when Krishna plays these notes, the ears of the cows and the calves become like they don't say satellites, but they say they just stand up on end. and they receive that note. And each cow, she receives the note of her name. And when she hears that note, then she goes running towards Krishna as her life and soul. And Krishna embraces that cow and brings that cow home. So Krishna is sitting somewhere in Vrindavan in a place called Tirkadam, and he's playing his flute. He's standing and playing his flute, and he's pronouncing or producing those notes, and he's calling each cow. That means he's calling each of us. Come home, I'm waiting for you. There's a home here, it's a permanent home. It's not like this temporary home that you're used to. It's waiting for you. Come home. I'm calling you by name. You, Braj Mohan, come home. And some cows, they wander a little far. I'm a cow that keeps wandering far. No matter what I try, for so many years I've been trying to, but I get distracted and I wander somewhere far. Maybe the grass over here will be really nice and it'll be different, so let me go here and experience this. But what does Krishna do? Does he say, okay, well, I got 8.5 lakh cows. That's okay. That's enough. That's a good profit. That's a good balance sheet is okay. So we'll leave the cows that go really far. He wants each and every cow to come. Each and every cow has to be accounted for. So what does he do? How does he make sure he doesn't forget even one cow? And the Bhagavatam tells us this, and Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur makes this point. What does he do, Prabhu? Hold. This is what Krishna does. He takes out his mala, or he takes off his mala he's wearing. It's not quite like this. It's beautiful, jeweled. But 108, and he sits and he counts. Just like we're sitting and counting when we do our japa. We're counting, that's what we're doing on our beads, right? We're counting our names that we're chanting. He's also counting. He's counting his cows. He's counting, we can say, our names. So we're doing japa of Krishna. Krishna is doing japa of our names. That's how much he loves us. That's how much his remembrance is of us. So in this verse, we're inspired to remember Krishna, but our remembrance of Krishna, whether through reading Bhagavatam, Harikatha, in Sangha with devotees, whether in our different sevas, our offerings, and especially in our chanting, our remembrance of Krishna is simply a reciprocation of Krishna's eternal remembrance of us. He never forgets us, not even for a moment, not even for a moment's moment. He never forgets us. So the very least we can do is to reciprocate. So in closing, I just want to invite you that please, if at all possible, when you're chanting, when you're sitting to read Bhagavatam, or in any seva that you're doing, just take a moment and remember that whatever I'm doing now is just a little bit of reciprocation to Krishna's eternal, unending, unflinching, unconditional, unfailing love and remembrance of all of us. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Vyankata Bhatta Prabhu, for a very sweet and comprehensive class on sharing the 3 secrets about hearing. That's how I will take it home, to hear and not just leave it at that, also internalize, offer everything to the dear Lord, whatever you do, and always feel Lord's presence to be very near, that He's always with us. So thank you very much. We hope you come back to your home, the shelter of all of us, Radha Gopinath, again and again, and so let us thank him once again by loudly chanting Hri Bol, Hri Bol, Hri Bol. Any question anyone has? Else we'll conclude. Thank you. Hare Krishna.